We're live here today at Psych, but before we start the conversation or the discussion, do not forget to subscribe to our Facebook channel, Psych Talks 101. So, on today's podcast, we're going to discuss about Filipino psychology, particularly the cultural values and traits of the Filipinos. Without further ado, I am your host for today, Micaela Ong. Let's start the discussion. So before the formal discussion begins, I will introduce first the definition of Filipino values and also of the traits. Okay, first one, for the Filipino values, so it refers to the set of values in which is historically important of the lives of Filipinos. Pero paano? Bakit? Paano siya naging important? Kasi Filipinos tend to integrate these values on every decisions that they make on everyday lives. Let's move forward on defining or giving the definition of the traits. So, as for the traits, these are the ways on how Filipinos tend to behave in either a positive or negative way. In which, in this discussion, this students from Universidad de Manila, from the Department of Psychology, will dig further about the two-side analysis of different cultural values and traits of the Filipinos. To formally begin the discussion for this podcast, we will call on our guests, which are the students from Universidad de Manila PY41. And the topic that they are going to discuss with us is all about the cultural values and traits of the Filipinos in light to the Filipino psychology or Psikolohiyang Pilipino. So let's first ask them, of course. So, what are your knowledge about the Filipino cultural values and traits? Let's start first with Marvin. What about you? What is your knowledge about the Filipino cultural values and traits?
Thank you, Miss Ong, for introducing me. Again, I'm Marvin. So I am the one of the discussant for today to tackle what the one of the value of kagandahang loob is. So if we're going to determine and define what is kagandahang loob is in a Filipino views, it is the characteristic internally or externally dimension of Filipino psychology. Okay. So, if I'm going to define in a Filipino concept, kagandahang loob was empirically derived from individual from the various helping profession and academe who were asked to provide detail on a critical event where they experience kagandahang loob from other person in a various form of interpersonal interaction. So if we're going to define the Philippine abuse, it is uh, shared inner nobility. So that nobility is displayed the characteristic again to internally or externally dimension. So according to Ron Resurrection from Lasal, kagandahang loob is a Filipino indigenous concept that is usually used to refer to the action of a person who is capable of exhibiting positive relationship with others. So if I'm going to simplify it again, the kagandahang loob itself, kagandahang loob is pagpapakita ng kagandahang asal or kagandahang pag-uugali sa mga nakakasalamuha natin, hindi lang sa bahay, hindi lang sa labas, or hindi lang sa paaralan. So definitely napakalawak niya. It's how you to communicate to others. Makikita yan ng tao, yung sarili, makikita yan ng tao kung ano mismo yung kagandahang loob by ourselves. Let's move on to the negative counterpart, okay? Negative counterpart itself, that's from kagandahang loob, opposite dun sa kagandahang loob, which means is masamang loob. To make it simple, masamang loob, ito yung pagpapakita or pag-uugali na hindi kaaya-aya, inappropriate na pag-uugali na kung saan nakikita or napapakita ng isang tao na hindi maganda or hindi kaaya-aya yung pag-uugali ng isang tao. And for that, that's the simplified explanation about kagandahang loob. So we're going to move on to the topic is the one of the Filipino values. It's called hiya. So hiya meaning it is the alert us to the different meaning of the word hiya depending on the form. It can be either positive or negative depending on the context. The more appropriate translation of hiya is English is sense of propriety. Hiya is the to make it simple, hiya is parang ito yung nararamdaman natin kapag halimbawa nasa isang pangyayari o sitwasyon tayo, let's say papasok tayo ng late, makakaramdam tayo ng hiya. So that's the one of the example of hiya. So let's move on to the negative counterpart, which is again, it is the one of the Filipino culture to the essential role of the maintaining social harmony. So opposite naman siya doon sa hiya na parang actually it's antonyms ng hiya is walang hiya. So ito naman is parang ito yung negative part ng hiya, which is walang hiya nga. So ito naman yung pagpapakita ng wala kang moral, pagpapakita ng hindi kaaya-ayang pag-uugali or hindi kaaya-ayang perspective ng isang tao dun sa nakakasalamuha niya. So that's the one of example of the negative counterpart of hiya. So again, thank you for listening.
Before that, Marvin, actually tama siya, no, na kailangan talaga at a very young age din siguro maituro sa mga bata kung ano ang kahalagahan ng kagandahang loob. Dahil madadala rin yun sa kanila paglaki. So, for the next discussant, let's call on Ashley. What about you? What's your knowledge about Filipino cultural values and traits?
So, thank you for introducing me. So, my name is Ashley. So, may baon akong dalawang Filipino cultural values, which are the bahala na and utang na loob. So, let's discuss first the bahala na. So, bahala na has no direct translation or English translation, kaya nami-misinterpret siya ng mga Western scholars. Nami-misinterpret ng mga Western scholars as fatalism, which is dinefine nga ni Thomas Anges ang bahala na as the Filipino attitude that makes him accept sufferings and problems, leaving everything to God. So, ibig sabihin nito, ini-interpret nila na lahat daw ng problems ng Filipino is ipinapasa Diyos. Pinapasa Diyos nila, ina-avoid nila yung responsibilities ng na kailangan nilang gawin for that problem. Pero in contrast naman talaga, kung ano nga ba talaga yung psychology behind, the Filipino psychology behind that bahala na, si Dr. Lagmay, linifine niya ang bahala na as not fatalism. It's not fatalism. So bahala na is not fatalism, but rather it is a determination and risk-taking attitudes of Filipinos. Na kapag sinasabi nila itong expression na to is the Filipinos are ready to face the difficulties ahead of them. Like they are getting or pumping courage and trust to their capabilities na magawa at ma-achieve nila yung objectives nila para hindi sila panghinaan ng loob. Kasi even before pa nila sabihin yung expression na bahala na, they did their best to be prepared on the forthcoming problem. So, I have cited one study about sa Filipino expression ng bahala na and its influence to the Filipino Catholic beliefs and practices, na yung bahala na can be both a negative traits and positive traits. So, nagiging positive traits itong bahala na expression when it comes to for courage and trust, risk-taking attitude. Pero nagiging negative trait siya kapag nagiging fatalism at nagiging over-dependent na sa pagsasabi nito at ina-avoid na yung responsibility. So now let's proceed sa utang na loob. So utang na loob is a Filipino value that enables Filipinos to meet the demands of the world around them. So nami-misinterpret din tong utang na loob kasi in direct translation sa English, it translates as debt of gratitude. Ibig sabihin, nagkakaroon daw ng sense of burden and obligation associated with receiving help. Ayan. Actually, according kay Kaut, dinefine niya yung utang na loob as reciprocal obligation when the recipient of a favor feels indebted to repay the giver in the future. So, may obligation ka talagang i-repay yung tao na tumulong sa'yo. So, in Filipino psychology kasi, utang na loob is defined as gratitude or solidarity. Ibig sabihin, i-highlight dito yung importance ng social connections and reciprocal relationships. Reciprocal relationships in Filipino culture. So, hindi naman ibig sabihin na may utang, no word sa utang na loob, meaning may debt ka na, may utang ka na talaga. Isn't solely about material or immediate repayment. It reflects a deeper social understanding that relationships involve mutual support and reciprocity, even if it takes time or spans of generations. Utang na loob is not simply a transactional exchange of favors, but a reflection of Filipino values emphasizing community, reciprocity, and the enduring strength of social bonds. So, hindi lang siya about sa pag-repay ng tinulong sa'yo. But it is deeper when lalo na sa interpersonal relationship with other people. So, I have cited here a research about utang na loob na in-interview yung 15 Gen Z about sa view nila about sa utang na loob, and ang mga result doon is Gen Z view utang na loob as a form of extended gratitude and reciprocity that can lead to a meaningful connections if practiced moderately. So that would be all. Thank you.
Alright. Thank you for that, Ashley. Ang ganda ng insight niya, no, about the bahala na in the utang na loob. Especially na ito yung isa sa mga trending topics all over different social media sites nowadays. Especially, no, dun sa issue ng utang na loob ng isang anak sa kanyang magulang. It's really important thing to discuss. So, for the next discussant, let's call on John Abigail. So, John, what is your knowledge about Filipino cultural traits and values?
Morning, everyone, and good morning to all of you. So, my name is Joanne, and we're gonna talk about pakikisama. So, pakikisama is identified by Leach 1961 as a Filipino societal value. So, when we talk about pakikisama, it is a smooth interpersonal relation. So, it is also kapwa. Kapwa is a shared identity. Okay, so, ang kapwa may two categories yan. Ibang tao and hindi ibang tao. Kapag ibang tao, kakilala natin yan. It's like Filipino. Pero kapag sa hindi ibang tao, yung mga hindi natin kakilala, which is outsiders. So, pag sa two category, ibang tao, hindi ibang tao, sa ibang tao, meron tayong sinasabi na pakikilahok, pakikitungo, pakikibagay, and pakikisama. So, paano ba kapag pakikilahok? It is called joining and participating. So, when we talk about joining kasi, etong nandito tayo sa podcast ito yung pakikilahok. We're having a conversation with one another, discussing topics that we're gonna make it clear. We're gonna discuss what is the meaning of this and that. Then the next one is pakikitungo. So pakikitungo is transaction. So the way I'm speaking to you, the way I talk, the way I'm showing to you my personality and action, that is pakikitungo. It's all about conversation. So the next one is pakikibagay. Pakikibagay is in conformity. Ito yung nakikita natin sa iba, like kapag nasa labas tayo na hindi natin kakilala, pero nasa isang group tayo, we're having no relationship at all. We're doing this pakikibagay. Parang, I should be this kind of person na if everyone is silent, we should be quiet too, di ba? Yung hindi tayo masyadong OA, ganon. So, next one is pakikisama. Yeah, being along with. Ito yung ginagawa natin in everyday lives, especially with our tropa and mga kalapit natin. It has relationship and intimate relationship with others. And pag sa hindi ibang tao, ito yung papasok dito yung pakikipagpalagayang loob. One of nito example is kapag sa jeepney. In jeepney culture, 'di ba, lahat tayo makikiramdam na ay yung tao na ito nasisikapan, we should move. So andyan yung understanding and acceptance. And then the last one is the pakikiisa. Pag sinabi natin pakikiisa, ito lang one explanation for it. Being one with nation. Because just like example of this, in national election, yan yung collectivism, being one with the choices of everyone. Then the next we're gonna talk about is kalayaan. So when we talk about kalayaan, it refers to the freedom and license to do as you please. So what you also need to be aware of is the consequence of your actions and decisions in life. So kapag sa kalayaan kasi, it's a matter of life or death. One example nito sa Filipino psychology is ang ating our past with the colonial exploitation and our resistance with the colonizer like Espanyol, Americano, and Japanese. Yes, so that's the example of the colonial exploitation. And from that, this stemmed to the Filipino giving importance to kalayaan. Because if they did not resist and fight for independence, wala na sigurong Pilipinos ngayon, di ba? At sa mga Pilipino, ang Pilipino ay hindi magiging Pilipino on this modern time kung hindi tayo lumaban.
Okay, thank you for that, Joanne. Actually, no, para naman sa pakikisama, napakahalaga niyan, especially on establishing good relationships with other people, not just with your family and friends. So it's not just merely a value or a trait, but also a skill, interpersonal skill. Okay, so let's move on to our last discussant. What about you, Treja? What is your knowledge about the Filipino culture and Filipino cultural values and traits, rather?
So my name is Trisha May and I'm one of the guest speaker for today and I'm going to talk about the Kataruan or in unity and beyond na isa sa mga Filipino traits about societal value na nakapaloob sa study ni Enriquez. Isa sa mga nabanggit doon is yung it is not in the law, it is in the rule of the law. Yun ang quotation na natandaan ko talaga, nagkintal talaga sa isipan ko. Ayon sa first element of the Filipino concept about katarungan, nakalagay doon or naka-indictment doon na yung law is not always just. According siya kay Jock na 1994 study. Tapos, yung study na yun is nakapaloob sa Anglo system, which is nakapaloob doon yung katarungan, and yung flow system nun is yung about karapatan, katotohanan, katuwiran, tsaka yung pagkakaisa as unity, ganon. And then, how does the Filipino psychology behind that katarungan or societal value that I'm talking about is that medyo nag-umpisa or na-influensyahan talaga siya dun sa JJ movement or na-enlighten siya dun kay Benigno the First death. So, kung babalikan natin yung history nun, nagkaroon ng political awakening dahil sa assassination na nangyari that time kay Benigno, which is nangyari siya nung time ng Marcos regime na nagkaroon kasi talaga ng whitewashing, may mga political problems and issues na nagkaroon ng pagkakamulat ng mga Pilipino na magkaisa para malaman kung ano yung katotohanan na nangyari doon. And then yung sa katotohanan na yun, nagkaroon ng pangangatuloy ng mga Pilipino na kailangan talaga nilang magkaisa. And then, paano nga ba natin i-connect yung katarungan about doon? So, ayon nga doon sa study ni Benjamin Tolosa, isa siya sa mga
prominent na gumawa ng study about political economy ideologies about societal justice or social justice about katarungan is that yung ideohila na yun about sa social justice ay may negative counterpart about the death of Benjamin, which is the dogmatism and whitewashing that happened at that time na hindi talaga okay sa mga tao, or which is the na hindi naging okay kasi nga 'di ba sa buong history ng pagkakaroon natin ng kolonyalismo ay ayaw ng mga Pilipino yung pananakop, and ayaw nila sa hindi makatuwirang pamumuno. Kaya masasabi natin na nagkaroon talaga ng connection yung katarungan sa Filipino political system na hanggang ngayon ay ating pading inilulunsad. Ayon naman kay Dr. Francisco Namento, he stated that dogmatism is incompatible in dialectic materialism that makes politics dogmatized and ambiguous in terms of political system. Kasi yung kultura natin, as definition and conclusion ng ating sasabihin, is nagkakaroon talaga ng pagkakaisa para sa katarungan at maipakita yung katotohanan sa malinaw na pangangatuwiran. Ayun. That's all my suggestion about katarungan.
So, paalala lang no, sa ating mga viewers, hindi lang sa ating mga discussants, na ngayong darating na elections, especially for the local government unit, kailangan nating pairalin ng katarungan, bumoto ng tama para, di ba, magkaroon tayo ng mga leader na kung saan ay i-embody nila yung good Filipino cultural values and traits na deserve ng mga Pilipino.
So, before this podcast really come to an end, let's first discuss the top 4 negative traits of Filipinos. First is a colonial mentality. Probably one of the biggest flaws we have as a nation is our colonial mentality, because it's a negative trait that we acquired from the days under the Spanish and the Americans, in which resulted to us Filipinos indoctrinated the misconception that our culture is inferior and that our past colonizers are superior than us. Glaring examples of colonial mentality include patronizing foreign products instead of local brands, or favoring foreign values over our own, and even desiring to look more Western. As for the second one, is the mañana habit. It is ironic that the Spanish would accuse Filipinos of being lazy when they themselves taught us the mañana habit in the first place, known as tomorrow, mañana, or the mamayana habit. So, this habit encourages procrastination, in which, even the most urgent projects and tasks can be relegated for some other time. Also, the third negative traits is the crab mentality. This refers to the behavior of preventing someone from achieving something due to jealousy or envy. And this has the tendency to bring that person down. And just like crabs who could have escaped from the bucket, if they only stop pulling each other, nothing ever gets accomplished. And last but not the least is being onion-skinned or balat sibuyas. Filipinos are famous for being onion-skinned or easily slighted and perceiving salts. While it's perfectly normal for us to taunt and criticize others, they can't handle the same when it's being heard back at us, instead showing our extra sensitivity to insults. Usually, involve a foreigner making either a bona fide racist remark or a humorous jab at us Filipinos. True to form, our reactions would range from righteous indignation to excessive grandstanding. While it is alright to feel incensed, throwing a fit in front of the world would inevitably do us no good at all. And also, being onion skinned can be related to why Filipinos tend to sugarcoat things and they cannot even tell a person straightforwardly what they want to say, especially if it is a form of criticism. It is because most of the Filipinos are honest-skinned or balat sibuyas, or they are too sensitive enough that they cannot handle criticism that much. As a result, sugarcoating happens because of the regard of the me plus other culture or the kapwa culture that a person will just sugarcoat it in order to not offend the other party.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Once again, I am Michaela Ong, your host for this Psych Talks.